Welcome to podcast 40 in the series of Who Let the Master Out. And how exciting. This is going to be the first episode where we start delving into our soul gifts. The last 39 episodes have really been laying the foundation for us. When we're distracted by the external conditional world, all that fear noise will be so loud that it makes it very hard to hear the whispers from the plane of unconditional love. As we start to remember the masters we really are, these powerful, supernatural, eternal spirit beings made from unconditional love, as we start to remember that master that we are, the love energy begins to fill us up. And as we allow more love energy to flow through our bodies, it activates dormant abilities within us. In my life, after healing love energy began to flow more freely, the next expansion was a connection to higher knowledge, or what I call the knowing. And I categorized the knowing into 4 basic areas, just try to get my head around them and understand them. So these 4 categories are general knowledge of how life works on this physical plane. Like, why was the earth created? Why are we here? How does the fear ego work? And things like that. The second area kind of categorizes it into specific knowledge about things that pertain to myself or others. So why do I act that way? Why do they act that way? What is happening in their life? And the third category is receiving knowledge and information by seeing visions in the mind's eye, in that third eye chakra. So those just scenes that pop into your mind that seem to come out of nowhere and that give you insight and information into the world. And lastly, the 4th category is communicating with those who are on the other side. The mother and father of all things, our creator, communicating with our angels and spirit guides, and even communicating with those that we knew here who have passed to the other side. And even on occasion, those who we didn't know that have passed to the other side. When we all return home and turn back into, these supernatural beings, we turn in these rental cars that we're driving around in, we all return back to the form of that powerful spiritual being. And because there's no time or space, out of unconditional love, we want to help our other brothers and sisters that are still here, and we want to help them on their journey coming back to love. So we whisper, and we help create situations in others' lives to help them wake up and help them remember as well. So I'm going to start with a focus on kind of the first 2 areas around general knowledge of the physical plane and specific knowledge of individuals, because those kind of impacted me first. And I'll address visions and speaking to our friends back home in some future episodes, so hang tight. So as we learn to lower that volume of fear, we are better able to hear the whispers of love from back home. Then, when we learn to increase the volume and flow of unconditional love, we hear things even more clearly. So we turn down the noise of fear and turn up the volume of love, and that just seems to make sense. The mother and father of all things, and those back home, are constantly communicating with us, or trying to. And we'll cover communicating with the others in future episodes, but now just want to focus a little bit on hearing from the source, from our creator. Throughout my life, each time I took a step toward the creator, it felt like he or she took many more steps toward me. And those steps were big honkin' steps. If I asked a question, I received an answer somehow. Once, it was through a friend giving me a pamphlet they thought I would be interested in. And that answer actually was the exact question I had asked. I mean, literally on the pamphlet, it was in bold, the question I had asked and then the answer. And I was like, whoa. Other times, and I'm sure this has happened to everyone, you kind of have this inquiry in your mind or you ask in your heart, and the answer comes in the form of receiving a piece of mail, or you get an email suddenly to your email, inbox, or you see something posted on the internet that you just happened upon. It's just crazy that if we pay attention, we can see it happen everywhere. And all it does take is paying attention and not limiting the ways we are willing to receive communication. Now, I've recently, over these last 2 or 3 months, I've been through a journey in moving from Colorado to Idaho where it has really been reinforced with me how easy and peaceful life can be when we just shut up, watch, and listen. And you'll hear all about that, and it's going to be in my next book, one of my next books that's going to be kind of a life adventure tour guide book, and I'm going to have it in there because it was crazy. Also, realizing and facing our fears helps us quieten ourselves. And eventually, we receive answers that pop into our head. They kind of feel like a memory that just suddenly reemerges. It's like you're remembering something that already happened, and it's the answers to your questions. Now we test this information as it comes to us, and when we do that, eventually we'll discover that there's one voice in our heads that is always correct. In the beginning, we have all these thoughts in our minds, all these voices from our fear ego, from our past, on things people said about us and to us, and all the praise and punishment that we receive throughout our lives. Their voices in our head as well. That's all those loud voices of fear. But as we quiet ourselves and we start listening, one voice always stands out, and that's always correct. And we learn to trust it, and it begins to tell us amazing things about this life that we're living. And it is through this voice that I have learned of the path of coming back from fear. And I was shown the two worlds we live in, one of unconditional love, where we come from, and one of conditional love based on the fear ego. And as I observed life, I suddenly knew why some things were happening and why people I knew were making the choices they did. Now, I don't think I have all the answers, because how boring would that be? We don't come here to figure it all out anyway. We come here to experience uncomfortable emotions. And at some point, we determine that we're ready to awaken. We come here for that contrast, to compare unconditional love next to conditional love, to understand it and to understand ourselves. And then once we awaken, then we share that information with others to help them awaken when they are ready. We can allow this uncommon sense to come to us. And with open hearts and with open minds, we learn to be still and watch and listen. And then our world just opens up. Next episode, We'll chat about the meaning of the dreams we have when our physical body is sleeping. So until next week, break the cycle. Be free, be big, because we're giants in a world of giants who've been taught that we're weak and that we're small. And it's time to rise. It's time to let your master out.